everybody. Welcome. We are delighted to be here today for our Future Forward series event that is focused on leadership and women leadership in the beauty industry. So this is a big month and actually a big day. Who knows what month this is? Yes, National Women's History Month. Do you know what today signifies? What day is? Today is actually the day that it takes for women to work a year and a half to catch up to men's pay from last year. It's not a very good thing to celebrate, but it's a good thing to remind people that of the need for women in leadership and the need for days and months like this to acknowledge women's presence and contributions and rise and leadership. So we're really excited to have this particular session, and we have some exciting news to tell you about future sessions like this that may be happening in the future, thanks to some of our one of our guests in particular. So we're going to save that special announcement to the end. But without further ado, I am the chair of the Integrated Marketing and Communications Department. My name is Kathleen Rennie. I know many of you here. Hello, everybody on Zoom. We're very happy to have you join us. If you know anything about me, I am so into having students participate in events like this, because this is where you get to meet amazing people who you can network with and to learn a lot from. So welcome everybody today, and I will now introduce our panelists. So let's talk a little bit first about Pamela. Pamela Vaile is president of her own consulting firm. She's had an amazing, distinguished career that spans over 3 decades. You're an accomplished marketing executive and a leading authority in fine fragrance. So for those fragrance folks out there, this is your leader that you really want to connect to in all beauty categories. And she specializes in product innovation, strategic marketing, and brand creation. And she's worked for major organizations. You're going to be hearing a lot more about these organizations coming up on a global scale. She's held senior level corporate positions at L'Oreal, Avon, Bath and Body Works, Revlon, Estee Lauder, and the list goes on and on. And these are corporate leadership roles. Again, so not only experience globally, but experience at a lot of organizations. So when she started her own company in 2004, and she offers a unique talent in providing marketing intelligence, of course, her fine fragrance development using those many decades of being in that industry, brand creation, and execution. She also, we are lucky enough that she teaches right here with us at NYU. Woo! And she teaches, some of her students are here. She's fangirling right here and supporting. And you got your MBA at Pace. And we're so lucky to have Pamela here. I know her students for every time you teach, you're a fan favorite. So we're so thankful that you're to have us on your here all the time talking to us. So for those of you who have not had the opportunity to have Pamela in class, you're really you have a special treat today to listen to her great experience. We also have Kate Greene here, who is founder and chief creative officer of Our House, which is her own company. You know that you've gotten somewhere when you've got enough experience to go out on your own and enough credibility and confidence. So you are the founder and chief creative officer of Our House, and it's a creative marketing agency specializing in branding, storytelling, strategic copywriting. Any of you people in my PR Writing 2 class, please pay attention to that. Kate has held executive marketing positions at Revlon and L'Oreal, and a 20-year career with the world's largest fragrance and flavor company, Givaudan.
Well done.
You were hired to establish and lead the marketing team, as well as support the opening of Givaudan in New York. And you held additional senior level positions in new business development, licensing, public relations, communications during your 2 decades there. And then in 2019 is when Kate founded her own marketing and branding firm. And you're going to be hearing a little bit about Our House too later, so you can fill us in on what you've done there. So I know that the bios are in the invitation. And we also have, we're gonna link in with you, so we're gonna hear a lot more about your distinguished careers. What's really interesting, I think, when we think about women in leadership positions and women in beauty in particular, is that, you know, beauty, who are the customers of beauty? Who do you think most of the customers are? Women, right? So you would think that the leadership and the management of organizations in the beauty industry would be largely women. So we might hear differently today. So I want you to just put that bug in your ear, because it's an interesting what's happening in reality, and what you think might be happening may not be. So these two women who have risen to leadership positions really have a lot to share with us today. So Pamela, I'm gonna actually start with you. Tell us about your interest and passion for beauty and why you're so engaged in mentoring young people in this particular space.
Thank you. First of all, Kathleen, I want to thank you for making this possible, because this is a great initiative here at NYU. And this is my leadership class that we're sitting in right now. And I love you all. And many of you have heard my bio and heard my lectures. But just for those of you who are joining virtually, this is a great passion of mine. We're teaching here at NYU, but also working in the beauty industry. And so many of you come to me and say, I want to get into the beauty industry. How do I do that? How do I become a leader? And I've been teaching at NYU for about 7 years. And so I hear that all the time. And so I want to thank you for making this possible.
I did it for them, so thank them, because that's what we hear. There are so many of you that want to get into this space, and you feel real deep connection to this industry.
Absolutely. And this lecture, this panel today, with the great partnership with my dearest colleague, Kate Greene, is really for you. It's not about us. It's about the lessons we've learned, the wisdoms we want to share with you about what it's like to rise in leadership and to work in the beauty industry. So I'm just going to start with a little quick story about how I got involved with beauty. And it's just a funny little story. It won't take too long, but I wanted to share with you when I was 18 and in college, I got a job at a department store to sell cosmetics. And I was going to school during the day, and at night I was selling cosmetics. And I was offered an opportunity to become a salesperson for a clinic owned by Estee Lauder. And it was a big honor. You had to go to, I lived in Garden City, which is a little suburb on Long Island, and you had to go to the Estee Lauder offices in New York City for 3 days for training. And here I was, 18 years old. I go up to the magnificent Estee Lauder offices on Fifth Avenue and General Motors building. Kate knows it well. And I go for 3 serious days of training. And I go into Estee Lauder's beautiful reception area, which is beautiful baby blue, Mrs. Lauder's favorite color, the satin curtains, the silk pillows, view of Central Park, and I was blown away. I was blown away that this was such a beautiful world that I was entering. So anyway, I went through my 3 days, felt like 3 years, 3 days of training. And I learned about cleanse, tone, moisturize, dermatologist tested, pure, 100% clean, and all the benefits of Clinique, all the product training. And I got my white lab jacket, which was very important when you work for Clinique. You had to have your white lab jacket.
Brands.
Yeah, it's badge of
So
honor.
then I go out, I go back to the counter, and I'm back in my job, freshly trained. And this gentleman walks up to the counter, nicely dressed gentleman, and he says, hey, what is this new brand? What can you tell me about it? Tell me about this brand. So immediately I'm like, okay, I'm going to tell you about Clinique. And I told him all about the cleanse, tone, moisturize, dramatically different moisture lotion, and all the different products Clinique's line, how it's dermatologist tested, how it's pure, how it's allergy free, hypoallergenic. And I go through about 15 minutes of describing this line to this gorgeous gentleman. And he says to me at the end, he says, wow, you are so passionate about this brand and you know it so well. He said, I'm so impressed. He said, oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, my name is Leonard Lauder and I'm Estee Lauder's son. and you need to pursue a career in the beauty industry. And it was like God came down and anointed me. It was the mic drop. And I was forever emboldened by those words from that kind man who took the time to listen to me as an 18-year-old, freshly trained clinic sales associate. And so it gave me the courage to pursue my career. And you're going to hear more stories like this from Kate and I, because, you know, the truth is, as women, we need to support each other. We need to have confidence to go out there to pursue our dreams. And we need to have the belief in ourselves. And he gave me that little bit of belief in myself. And I went to work for Revlon. Then I went to work for L'Oreal. I worked at L'Oreal in sales and training. I then went to Avon, and I worked in international marketing Avon for 9 years. I worked as marketing manager for Latin America. Many of you know this story. You've had me in previous classes. And I got my MBA when I was at Avon. And then I got really kind of frustrated in my career because I wasn't going anywhere. So I actually got a job offer at Bath and Body Works in its early infancy. I was a part of 5 people who created the Bath and Body Works line. And you guys know this story. And so the profound part of it was that I got to touch all sides of that brand. It was just an idea that became a $1 billion business in 5 years. And I got to work with perfumers for the first time, and bench chemists and package designers. And I got to work with operations and marketing and the merchandising team. And it was a phenomenal 360-degree experience for me as a young leader. And it changed me profoundly, because when you're corporate, you're siloed. But when you work on an entrepreneurial brand, you get to touch all sides of the brand. And so I spent 9 years at BBW. It became a $1 billion business in 5 years. And many of you know the brand well today. And then I went on, and I did get another big corporate job at Revlon, but then I decided to go out on my own. And I opened my own consulting firm and had the great pleasure to work with great companies, which you'll hear more about later on. Laura Mercier, Michael Kors, Giorgio Armani, Victoria's Secret, Bath and Body Works, Avon International. So anyway, that's a little quick snapshot, but I wanted to share the story of how I became so in love with the category. So I'm going to turn it over to
And I'm going to ask Kate too in a
Yes,
second,
yes.
but I want, when I first heard that amazing story of, Pamela doing her homework, being all prepared, and then stepping up to the plate and
The lab
just
jacket.
the lab jacket. And well, let me tell you about all that I know. You're awed by it. It's almost like the first thing I said was, wow, it's like someone had a crystal ball. But then I sat back and I'm like, you know what, Pam? You met the moment. And that, I think, is what I want you all to hear, guys too, out there. You need to be prepared to meet the moment. And she was prepared to meet the moment because she did what? You did your homework. Over 3 grueling days, you really learned about the product, you put your heart and soul in it. You felt what that brand was like because you visited, and then you were ready, and then she soared. I'm not so sure if you didn't have that experience, you wouldn't have had the same, I'm sure you would have had the same success. I'm not so sure that he was he gave you a little boost and it was like a wow experience, but you folks are here at NYU to meet the moment, and you're in this room, particularly those who are coming, here on Zoom and from other classes. It's about meeting the moment. So listen to those sparks here about how these 2 women have met the moment when leadership positions opened up. So Kate, how did you fall in love with beauty?
It's our stories are kind of similar, and the fact that we got our start just down a couple of blocks on 5th Avenue in the same building, the GM building, which back in the day, the GM building housed both Estee Lauder and Revlon. And it's kind of funny, competing companies. And so you bump into colleagues that you got to know in the hallways, basically because of the employee stores were in the basement. And so we would trade passes back and forth with our Lauder friends. I was at Revlon at the time. Pam knows these stories well. But thank you, Kathy, by the way, and Pamela for having me today. I'm honored to be here with you all to mark this very special month, this very special moment together with what Pam has ideated with NYU. And I truly am honored to be here. My story started complete happenstance. I mean, it was, I guess, fate. I'm a Bostonian and I go Boston. And I grew up and was in the restaurant business where I met the love of my life, my husband, and then he got a job offer to come to New York. We were all set. We were about to get married. We were going to settle in Brookline, and we come to New York for his job. I had to find a job. I was very deliberate about it. I would borrow my sister-in-law's best suits. I was trying to look the look. And at the end, I got very close to an offer from Revlon, which I had seen the Help Wanted ad back in the day. They were called Help Wanted ads for a secretary position at Revlon. And I had dreams of lipsticks. It sounded amazing. And then there was Morgan Stanley, who bizarrely were also interested in me. And math is not my strong suit. And I just wasn't feeling it. So I went with the Revlon position, but there was one little funny hiccup that happened. My job was to be the secretary to the vice president of marketing, who was on a health leave. And I got an invitation in the mail to say, meet me at the plaza. And I was so starry-eyed. It was a horrible rainy day. I was worried about bad hair day. I go to the steps of the plaza. We had to meet on the steps of the plaza, which faces the GM building, when a man in an umbrella showed up and said, my name is James. I'm acting as emissary. And I thought it was like a Hollywood movie, the way he was saying he was an emissary, and this is so dramatic and wonderful. And he said, and I was waiting to have my tea. And he said, but we have to go across so we can formally interview you. And I thought, well, there went the tea. So we go across to the GM building, and I had to take a typing test. And I thank the nuns that I had back in high school who really, made a point that you need to learn how to type. And I didn't know it at the time, but I could type really fast. And strangely, because of that typing test, I got the job. The last point of my story is that because the VP of marketing, who was a woman, was not there, I would ultimately meet her 4 months later. I had so many females, so many fearless females who were, in addition to James, who was not a female, but these women were smart, they were savvy, they were marketing manager level and director level and some senior director. They took me under their wing and they gave me a chance. I was learning at a very young age, very quickly, that you help each other. I'll never forget, I had to do a sales analysis for a new skincare cream for Ultima 2. And I had to do a sell through. I didn't even know what that meant. I had to call stores, Bloomingdale's, Macy's, find out how many they sold, and then do an analysis of what was the percentage. And I'll never forget the senior marketing woman at the time. After I turned in my analysis, she wrote a note on it and gave it to the president of the group and said, I want you to see what Kate Greene did. I think it's fabulous. And she copied me on it. I still have it. I will never forget her kindness. And I was learning, this is what it means to be a leader. Okay, I admire her, and this is a whole new world for me. And that was just my first 2 weeks. More to come.
So leadership in this space is unique. First of all, one or both of you can talk to. Is there a boatload of women leaders in this space? Because there's a boatload of us consuming.
Well, a couple of things I'll say, and then Kate's got some wonderful stories she'll share as well. But, in the beauty industry, one of the challenges I felt in my generation was that it was a male-dominated world. Even though the people who use lipsticks are not men. The women who use mascara and foundation are not men. And yet all of my senior management, when I was at Avon, when I was at Revlon, were men. And so it was really interesting to me because I remember being at Avon and I was a marketing manager, so I had a pretty good title. I was launching a line of new lipsticks for Latin America. And there were new shades, 10 new shades of lipsticks, and there was a new lash lengthening mascara I was launching. And I had to explain this to my male boss, who I loved, by the way. I loved this male boss. He was adorable, wonderful. He was a great boss. But he sat there and I was explaining, lipstick it's glossy, it's matte, it can be creamy, it can be opaque, it can be high stain, it can be sheer. And then I said, and then different colors range differently on different skin tones. And he's looking at me. And finally, he took the lipstick and he put on the lipstick, put on the bright red lipstick. And he said, wow, I can see it's creamy, but at least he tried to learn the product. He was the only male boss I ever had that actually sat there and put a lipstick on to feel the texture, that he put the colors on his arm to see the color range. And then we got the mascara out. He takes the mascara, almost pokes his eye out, puts it on his lash to feel what a lash lengthening mascara would do. And I looked at him, he was hysterical. He had red lipstick on, smeared, and a smeared eye. But he was the only boss that ever engaged with the product that we were selling at Avon. Avon's business was $1 billion in Latin America. And yet the senior decision maker never would wear the product except this one guy. And I remember thinking to myself, this is so amazing that he at least understands the product that we're selling to millions of women around the world. And so this male-female thing it's changing now, of course. Your generation, and this panel is for you. Your generation, there were many women rising in leadership, many directors, many VPs, many senior VPs. But if you look at the statistics still, and you guys, my class knows this from Sheryl Sandberg and how we study Sheryl Sandberg, but if you look at Fortune 500 companies, 21% of those CEOs are women, 21%. If you look at the beauty industry, the top 20 beauty industries, and this is statistics from this morning, only 3 women out of 20 companies are CEOs. That's 15%. So we still have a long way to go. And it's not a message of doom and gloom. It's just that we are rising, but we need to support each other. We need to believe in ourselves. And this idea that we can thrive and be the 50% of CEOs that we should be in the future. And so those are just some of the issues I think that face us in the beauty industry as we grow as leaders. So do you want to share?
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about your experience in leadership, and then also why is it important for young people who are rising to hear our stories?
So Pam hits a great point there that we're going to talk about also later, which is the passion point and that total immersion into what we do. So, beauty is an experience. It's a lifestyle. It's an emotion. And so that's so key to what we do. That's why you see us light up when we talk about it. And in terms of leadership, it's super important that you recognize opportunities when they come your way to be a leader. It can happen very early on in your career. It can happen, at any moment, and you need to have the radar for that, even if it might seem like something you don't want to do. So for example, in my early days at Revlon, I luckily got noticed fast because I was grabbing and spending time with these very dynamic women, and they gave me a lot of learning. And so I would take that, and run with it. And luckily I got a promotion, but it wasn't the promotion I wanted, but it was not a big leadership position. It was more a management position, but I was going to be called business team manager, which I kind of liked that over secretary. I didn't like that term, but it was, everyone has to start somewhere. And it was a very dry position. It was basically inventory. It was managing all the mascara wands that Pamela just talked about. All the bulk it was called, lipstick is called bulk. Okay, what goes in the bullet is bulk. I had to stay on track on all the inventory of what's called a BOM, the bill of material. So for a lipstick, it's the cap, it's the base, it's the bulk, it's the sticker, it's the label, it's the carton. And all of those have price points and cost of goods. And I hated all of it. It was boring. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do what I would ultimately do later at L'Oreal, similar to Pam. I would be working with product development and choosing the shades and taking the lead role on a huge tower that would go into CVS with lipstick and nails. And it was amazing. But the point of my story for you is I almost didn't take that job. I almost thought, well, maybe I'll stick it out and stay as a secretary because maybe a better job will come. And you know what? It was one of these wise women who said, Kate, take it. it's not forever, because you need to know what goes into the building of a product. You need to smell it, and you need to, understand it, and know that all these mascara wands and little lipstick bullets floating around, you can recommend to senior leadership, I think I see a gift with purchase here. I think we can combine the mascaras and the lipsticks, and that's where, a gift with purchase, which we did a lot of at the time, which I'm sure many of you have received at some point in your lives. Pam knows well, PWP and GWP, all our acronyms. But I was learning the ins and the outs. Was there a lot of math and spreadsheets and financials? Yes. But you know what? I forced myself into a very uncomfortable position. And as I know you all know, it's when you really stretch yourself and climb to places you don't want to go, that's where the growth happens. And that's also where you fail. I failed a lot, we'll hopefully we have time to talk about failures because it's great. But that's where I learned the hard way and sometimes the not so hard way. So I was starting to form an understanding, working with leaders to see them in action. The Revlon position was a wonderful opportunity for that. So that when I finally got to L'Oreal, the next chapter, I was much more in a leadership position, working, by the way, very independently, because if you know L'Oreal, they really are about working independently, still to this day, I have to say.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit more about the challenges. So leadership is challenging no matter where you're a leader in any industry, no matter who you are. But are there particular leadership challenges for women in the beauty industry? Whether they're, and it could be professional, it could be with products, it could be personal.
Yep. Well, I'll
What's
start
unique?
and then we'll go to Kate. It's kind of been our little process here.
We're good together.
Yeah, we are. We're a good team. I happen to love this woman, by the way. I just have to, I have to, 20 years
We're girl
of
pals.
loving her. Serious girl crush,
Lucky.
amazing Kate Greene. So I just want to say that for me, as a woman moving into leadership, I was very ambitious. I wanted the leadership roles. I didn't always get them. I had to compete with men. I had to have a voice in a room full of men. I had to, as we say with the famous Sheryl Sandberg, we've studied this in the class, lean in, sit at the table, have a voice, challenge leaders around me that were male, and be able to have the confidence to be my own person. So that was a big challenge for me in my growth as a leader, because you know what, there were no leadership classes when I was corporate. And when I got my MBA at Peace, there wasn't one leadership class, not one. And at Avon, at L'Oreal, at all those executive positions, no one ever said, here's how you become a great leader. Or here's the things you need to think about when you have a team, or you have a staff, or you become a vice president. And so part of that was just lack of any kind of training or education or awareness. We talk about emotional intelligence in leadership, the ability to understand your own emotional self and have empathy for those that work for you and with you, to empower others. Nobody ever shared those ideas with me. And so I think part of being a leader was learning by evolving and growing and living a little bit of time, like 100 years. But the other thing is, for me, and I'll shift it over to Kate, I was a mother, and I had a beautiful 4-year-old son at home and a baby girl, and I was working 15-hour days in New York City, and my baby girl would be asleep when I left in the morning. She'd be asleep when I got home at 8 or 9 o'clock at night. And I would sit every day on the train with tears in my eyes because I wanted to be a mother. I didn't want a nanny to raise my children. My son was jealous, kindergarten. It was a time in my life where I couldn't find the balance. And so I went out on my own. I left the corporate world. And I left the corporate world for a number of reasons, but I had this uncanny belief in myself that I could be my own business. And when I left the corporate world, nobody was doing it, right? Nobody,
Yes.
very few. I had a few female mentors that were amazing, but I left the corporate world. I was lucky. I had good relationships. I was 15, 20 years into my career, but that was a big challenge for me, being a mom. and not wanting to ask permission to go to my son's Christmas party at school, you know? And so I did leave the corporate world. I was lucky. I was also, had a lot of great relationships and immediately got consulting work from Revlon, from Bath and Body Works, from Avon.
So you see why Pamela says, we had this conversation before, she keeps saying she's lucky, so I'm always like, you met the moment. You met the moment. If you hear leaders, they're prepared, right? So listen, and sometimes women don't say I met the moment. We're more apt to say, says the research as well, I got lucky, I stepped on it, blah, 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 look what happened to me. But no. We make things happen.
That's right.
And you know, sometimes there are lucky breaks that we get, but you have to be ready to meet the break.
That's right.
So if you're not, then it goes away without you. So, you know, how do you prepare and do your homework, and how do you network, you know, and how do you make sure you know the right people, or someone that knows someone who knows the right people
And
that
be
you can
willing to
ask
take
for.
risks, you know, be willing to step out and say, I'm my own person, I'm gonna be me. And so anyway, those were some of the challenges.
And it was super brutal, particularly for the women who were leading in the first initial leadership roles, where there were no help for kids. Like, there's so much more opportunities for home, work-life balance. That was
That didn't
not a
exist.
thing. That
We
was
didn't have
phrase,
enough
work-life
things.
balance was not a,
No.
so that's important for you all to hear. To know that it's different, but also it's important to have that balance, and then leaders also make that balance. Which you
Exactly.
really met the moment for that too.
I did. I
Because you
had
were
to leave.
prepared.
I had to leave. I just say one more thing and then I'll turn it up to Kate. So I left the corporate world, but I knew that I could get business. I knew people who would hire me to work on marketing projects. I got to work with the great Michael Kors, Laura Mercier, great brands that were emerging. But I will say that, you know, not everybody has to leave the corporate world to find the balance today. Thank God for the pandemic. There's something called Zoom. And if your child is sick, they have PTO days now, paid time off. So you don't even have to say why you're not going to work. You can be childcare worried, you can have a mental health day, you can be sick. But the corporations now, because of Zoom, allow us to be much more flexible as moms, which is
It's a blessing.
So Kay, what were your leadership challenges in beauty that stick out?
Yeah, and there were definitely a few, and our paths are so similar, Pamela and I, because also a working mom with 2 kids. And I'll never forget, you know, I was new to Cody, the Lancaster Group, and I was hired to be the director of marketing for Jill Sander, which was so exciting. It was a big leap from my previous position working for another fragrance company, brand company. And so suddenly I'm on a plane a lot because Jill Sander is based in Hamburg and the shows are in Milan, and the order shows were in Hamburg. And at the time, the Lancaster Group worldwide creative teams based in Paris. Yet Lancaster made the very cool decision, which helped me out in my career, to move the worldwide marketing team from what was both in Wiesbaden and in Paris to New York. And awesome, it's what gave me a job. But the job did require a great deal of travel. I was in Europe constantly. Yes, there, you know, everyone says, but it's so glamorous, Kate. You know, everyone has this vision because I was in, you know, these beautiful places, and having the opportunity to see a true genius at work with Jill Sander and her vision. And that was phenomenal, and interacting with incredibly talented people. But I knew it could not be that sustainable. And I knew I needed to keep my ears and eyes open for another position. Like Pamela, I was not ready though. Like Pamela, I was feeling that urge. I remember my first business trip after I had my son, I was in business class with his onesie, you know, smelling it the whole way to Frankfurt. And I said to myself, you know, maybe this is not the only way. So when fortune would favor the brave, and I was sort of trying to find be ready for the moment, as Kathy says, I got a call that a fragrance house who I had been working with on a brief actually for Jill Sander, I spent a lot of time with them, and they wanted to hire me. And that was for a Japanese company called Takasago. And when I did that, you know what? I was nervous about leaving Cody and Lancaster and what I had, accomplished and learned, and it was a little bit life in the fast lane as well, but I learned a huge amount about fashion as well, which was a cool bonus. And this position was based in New Jersey, in the suburbs. My commute was shorter. I was living in Westchester at the time. And so it ticked all the boxes. And I was home at 5:30 every day, which is, we remember the days of black ties and events and working until 9, Jade's nodding her head. But truly, it was way too much. And so that was 5 years when my kids were really little, where I had the opportunity to not drive so hard. And I had leaders, both men and women actually, who, when I went over there, I found my voice and I said, here are my needs. I hope you can agree and honor this. And they agreed. So, as Kathy and Pam are saying, and as my friend Rose Eckert always says, if you don't ask, you don't get. So put yourself out there. You might be surprised what you can get. So that was a challenge. And the other challenge I want to mention too, just to kind of throw it out there, is for a creative. And there may be some of you, I think a lot of you actually, who identify as creative like me. To my core, I'm truly a creative person. I'm a copywriter. I'm a storyteller. I love visuals. I love putting together beautiful visuals and mood boards and concepting. And I have to admit, in my last tenure at Givaudan, over 20 years, managing different size teams, both in marketing and in communications, I struggled a bit, I think, with making sure I found the right balance and time to develop my teams. And like Pamela said, I did not have courses in management. And I have to admit, I think sometimes I might have been more on the creative because I had creative tasks and clients, and maybe I was leaving just a little bit less for my team. And so I went on the most phenomenal, fascinating leadership coaching situation where it was a week-long intensive event. And there was a lot of feedback. We had to do 360s, which, those of you who have done them, I know Pamela has done them. They're not easy. It's hard to hear people give a profile of you, right? But it's good. And as we will say, feedback is a gift. So when you have the chance to do a 360 or get feedback, embrace it. It really is worthwhile.
360 is when your employees, you get to give feedback about the boss. So they're not, usually people in leadership are giving their teams, but too often you have teams that don't feel like they can come to their leadership. So sometimes organizations will mandate it and say that in our company, we do 360s. And that means that you, even if from your very first job, you'll be able to give feedback to the boss.
And it's anonymous.
Cool.
It's really cool, and it's essential. And so I went through that, got so much feedback. But the point of my story is, one day I got a leadership coach. I had a whole day session, and I could go to the coach and share, very much like a therapy session, what issues I had as a leader and what we could do together. And he had my profile, he saw my scores, and he said, Kate, what's the one thing that you struggle with? And I said, I struggle as a leader because I'm a creative. Okay, I actually said that. He stopped for a second. The man was excellent. And he said, well, Kate, what's stopping you from leading as a creative? And I have to be honest, it hit me. And he said, I guess nothing, go on. And he said, well, give me an example of something you think you're not successful at with your team. Like, what's not working? I said, Monday morning status. Monday morning status is so dry. It's 9 o'clock in the morning. No one's really into it. I feel I'm always leading it. I feel like I'm dictating down and saying, what are you doing? And what are you doing? And what are we all doing this week? It's not additive. It's not bringing us somewhere else. We're not sharing. He said, okay, what's stopping you from, when you get back Monday, gather your team, tell them, be transparent what you're going through and what you're working on. Get big pieces of white craft paper, magic markers, Post-it notes, and say, team, we're going to turn a page, literally, and ask everyone to draw or write or sing what the perfect Monday status would be. And maybe it's not always on a Monday, but what is our coming together point? Can I tell you, I did that. it was a revelation, you know, like, again, a similar clouds party moment. And everyone was drawing things like going to Starbucks, and people were saying, what if we rotate every week, someone else takes the meeting? These were all simple solutions. It changed everything. And the last thing he said to me too was, I want to ask you, what is your percentage between being a creative and being a boss, being a leader? How would you say it? And I said, I don't know, maybe 50-50, but probably 80-20, 80 creative. He goes, Kate, it's now going forward 100% you're a leader. That's what you should be doing. 100% with your team. You'll get the creative stuff done, but focus on them. It changed everything.
So I think, I'm gonna ask one more question before we open
Sure.
it up to students.
Yes.
But what I'm hearing both of you say is that, you know, leadership is also learned. So you're picking up as you go through your career, little bits and pieces from whoever is your own boss or leader. And also, it doesn't even have to be 360. I always feel like if you're a good leader, you should listen, you're
Yes.
seeking that 360 all the
True,
time.
true.
If, as long as the work's not pilot, like really trying to be mindful of always trying to let that penetrate into your day. But so after, when do you, I'm gonna ask, like, when do you kind of get and say, this is my leadership style or philosophy? What is that? And how did you sort of piece it together? And then I promise after this, we will open it up to students for questions.
Well, first of all, I think your own leadership style relates to your personality and who you are as an individual. I do think we learn as we grow into leadership. Some people are natural born leaders, but most people learn through experience. And so in terms of my style, what I learned about myself as a leader, because I don't think I was a very good leader early in my career. I had staff reporting to me, but I didn't really put them first. I didn't really empower them. A lot of the things that Kate mentioned, I didn't do well either because I didn't even think about it. But now I will tell you that I do think about my own emotional intelligence. We talk about this a lot at NYU in my leadership class, really empowering others, walking beside your team, not in front of them, really giving everyone an opportunity to shine and to be empathetic. Empathy is a big word because you might have an employee, a member of your team that is showing up late, is not performing well, is leaving early, and there might be something terrible going on in that employee's life. And we talk about this a lot. And that you as a leader, it's your responsibility to show empathy, to care. And so for me, I think these moments of empathy, of emotional intelligence, putting others first, putting smart people around you. You know, the famous Janet Gerwich always says, she was the founder of Laura Mercier, she always says, if you think you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. So you put smart people around you, you empower them, but also you show empathy. And one of the concepts that I love is this idea of the level 5 leader, which we've talked about in class, which is defined by humility and fierce resolve, so that you are focused on your work, you're doing your homework, as Kathleen has said, you're preparing yourself, you're on top of your game as a leader, but you're humble. And you don't see the organization as an egocentric endeavor. It's about the company and empowering those who support you in your leadership.
Yeah, you know, you need to have a heart. And it's the topic of my lecture actually later today is leading with humanity and empathy. And it means I'm hardwired the same way you are. And I've learned a lot from this lady too. And she's been a great mentor and a great friend, but I've learned about navigating the consultancy world and having both empathy for your clients, but also standing up for yourself and how to write a proposal and how to be a leader, to lead as a consultant, which was new for me. And, you know, Pamela paved the way. But this idea of, you know, there's that famous incorrect line that, you know, it's not personal, it's business. Well, business is personal. And, you know, you do need to care. And the great leaders like, you know, Barack Obama, he had that famous speech back in many years ago where he said, there's an empathy deficit. They talk about, our finances and the budget deficit in our country, but there's an empathy deficit. And so that hit me like a ton of bricks when I was doing my research for the lecture and reminded myself of that moment. And great leaders in the spiritual world like Deepak Chopra, who takes the time and care to really, understand the human condition. And, he's got some amazing books out there as well. But in terms of acting with empathy and, as Pamela just said, understand your team, realize that you may not know what's happening with someone on your team, but did you ask? Did you care? Great empathy starts with curiosity. You have to be curious and go there. I'll finish with one story that's rather a surprising one that happened, but one that I talk about a lot because it had my much younger entry-level self in a surprising, unexpected moment that I didn't know at the time that would be defined as leadership. So the emissary I mentioned with the umbrella at the plaza who came to get me, named James, it turned out he would be my direct manager for the first few months. So I think I told you my manager was on a health leave. And I learned early on that something was up with James because he was very isolated. His door was always closed. And I knew something was going to be difficult when the team of other admins came up to me and apologized for what I was about to inherit. And I thought, it can't be that bad. So, he was very quiet. He did not acknowledge really many people's presence. He did not develop. He was to himself, which I thought was odd. I had never really, remember, I'm new to the whole beauty biz. I'm new to really the whole new career in New York. And I have someone who's a little bit like not very nice, but he wasn't mean. He just wasn't nice. Yet when I would bring in work that I had done for him, I noticed beautiful family photos. His wife would come with his 2 children every now and then to visit him at the office. And I thought something was up. So this went on for a little bit. I knew it was not going to last. I wasn't going to last. So I spoke to my husband and I said, I either have to leave because I don't like the environment. It was kind of toxic, frankly. And what saved me were those women that I mentioned, that group of great women who were also aware of it, but his direct manager, right, wasn't around. So, and he was also a big producer. I think sometimes bullies like that don't get spoken to because people just think, he's delivering on the need, right? So I decided I was going to confront the bully. That's my story. And I practiced with my husband and I asked him if I could speak with him. And I very respectfully and carefully just said in my own words, James, I don't know if you know this, but you make me feel bad sometimes in the office. I don't feel valued. I haven't learned too much. We don't seem to have time for you to teach me. And frankly, it's making me feel that maybe I should leave. The reaction I got is not what I expected. He started to cry. And he said, I am so sorry. I never knew. No one ever told me. No one ever told me about this. And the beautiful part of the story is that it's very much the Scrooge story. It was redemption. He changed. He changed instantly. He was the best guy. He was spending time with all of us, teaching us the way of the world of, all the inventory problems at Revlon. And it was a happy ending that I never expected. He became a very dear friend. And in that one moment as an admin entry level at Revlon, people were coming up to me wondering if I had spoken to him, and I didn't want to reveal that either. I kept it confidential. I just, but I sort of took on this like mythic quality in some ways. Like suddenly I was a leader in my own way, even though the title didn't say it. So I say to you, you're a leader. Be a leader.
And you can be a leader in your classes, you can be a leader
Yes.
in your clubs, you can be a leader in your community. So recognize those things. And I think there have leadership moments that sort of all tie up to how you, the kind of leader that you become, and you take little bits and pieces
Yes.
from the people who inspired you. And then sometimes I've had leaders that I've been like, I'm never going to be like that. You promise yourself deep inside like that, I will never make someone feel that way, right? Or
Yeah.
if you've had some bad leadership experiences. So what I'd like to do now is to ask you folks on Zoom, if you want, we can get from our staff here if people are asking questions on Zoom, but is there anybody here with questions about the industry, about leadership in beauty? I want to know what lipsticks buy, but I'm going to say that for later. You have a question and then Danny?
As a leader, is there any time you were being challenged and how would you cope with that situation?
Okay, so the question is, as a leader, have you been challenged and how did you cope with that situation?
Well, I would say personally, there have been many times that I was challenged as a leader. I had a series of really toxic bosses for several years at Revlon and at another position. And I found that similarly to what Kate is mentioning, when you've got a boss who constantly minimizes you, constantly gives you negative feedback, doesn't see you, doesn't recognize you, it starts to hit you here, you know. And there's this whole saying, it's like fight or flight, you know. And similarly to her, I mean, you know, that's one of the challenges I had was actually a woman, it was a female leader, and she was just the meanest, cruelest person in the world. I don't know how anybody could get meaner. And I remember I went in her office, I said, can I have a few moments with you? Closed the door, and I said to her, I have never had a boss treat me the way you treat me. You are so unkind. Why? What am I doing? Of course, I blame myself,
Yeah.
you know, and I had a very similar reaction. She was shocked that I said that to her, but I had to have the courage to go back at her or quit the job, right? And I wanted to quit the job, but I thought to myself, I'm not going to quit the job. I'm going to go in and confront her. And if it's terrible, then I'm going to quit the job. You know, why not give it a shot? And in the end, the first thing she said was, did you tell my boss? And I'm like, no, I'm telling you, you're so cruel to me. Why? And finally, she apologized. She changed. She was the nicest. Oh, she was so nice. I don't think she really changed as a human being, but she was very nice to me after that. So what is that challenge? What's that lesson? When the odds are against you, when you want to quit, when you want to run, you know, from an uncomfortable position, try to find the strength in yourself to stand your ground, you know, and go back and support yourself. And it's a surprising victory that we all, as we move into leaders, we have these challenges, you know, and I think that's a big one.
It's kind of like you're
for me.
practicing your leadership skills in those
Yeah.
situations, you know, when you have to, sometimes on your rise, you almost have to, sometimes I'd say like, I'm just gonna go in and pretend I'm in a play or something. And just
Oh, that's
sort of have like,
yes.
like a performance, and I'm going to, if you don't have enough guts, like what can you figure out to have enough guts to
Exactly.
do it? And you always do it in a classy way, right? You didn't scream at the person.
Right.
And both of you told stories about sort of
Yes.
confronting.
Yes, with respect.
Have
Yeah.
the strength, stand your own ground and have your own voice,
Don't
even
ever
if the odds seem
Go,
against you.
don't go low, go
Yeah,
high,
go
but
high.
do
Yeah.
have a discussion, you know, that's what, that'll
Exactly.
prepare you for leadership. And then you can
Yeah.
always remember not to be like that person.
Yes.
Exactly.
Make a note to self.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes, and draw on, you know, sometimes leaders can feel, you know, never feel that it's beyond you, or, you know, you're afraid to seek, you know, other points of view. So that's where your network comes into play. You know, I like to say that, you know, and Pamela relates to this, I know, is, you know, I have my own leadership advisory panel. You know, we've all worked with great, fearless women who have, you know, showed us the way. And so, you know, in my case, you know, I had the good luck to have worked for many years with the great Karen Corey from Estee Lauder, you know, 40-year career developing all the global fragrances for that company. And she has a way of, the way she works with creatives, you know, the word that she uses is she's there to support them. She has a huge amount of respect. And she always operates that way because as creatives, we work best when we feel safe, right? And so she is an incredible leader, the way she conducted herself and with such style and elegance as well. And so she's someone that I, have reached out to over the years. And there were many others as well.
And I would just add, we
yeah.
have like our girl.
our girl crew. Yeah.
And we are 20-year veterans of the beauty industry, but we love each other. We've lived through
We're lucky.
many jobs. Jobs will come and go, but the relationships you build with your colleagues last a lifetime.
Yes.
And I can tell you, we have five good girlfriends our age in the industry, our length of time, that we can call at any moment and, share our woes, share our triumphs. And so I do think networking and building your relationship building is one of the most important.
And they start now,
things.
today. You only
Yes.
have two. I'm gonna get Danny and then another
Danny, go
question
ahead,
and then
Danny.
over here.
Oh, yeah. So what are best practices to get rid of imposter syndrome? So to prove to yourself and to others that you deserve to be exactly where you are.
Oh, that's such a good question. I still feel like an imposter at times because life throws you a curve. You get for me, I work with indie brands, as you know, I work in the fine fragrance world, and I will have a very successful launch. And then if I'm working with a celebrity, suddenly the celebrity decides not to work on the fragrance brand anymore. Or there's a twist and a turn in the road, and then you've got to fix something, kind of like you having to learn all the aspects of a lipstick. You've got to fix something that you don't have expertise in. But the truth is, take it on, learn it, and it's lifelong learning, right? It's lifelong learning. So the imposter syndrome, if you were to put me, on a manufacturing floor of a lipstick, Avon's lipstick manufacturing plant, I would be an imposter because I wouldn't really know what they were doing, but I would learn.
Yes.
And certainly in my leadership, there's so many things I learn every day. I learn from you guys every single day. And that is, maybe we all have a little imposter in us because we're in a constant state of learning. Does that make sense?
And it keeps you humble a little bit in some funny way, that humility comes through. And I think
Yes.
to Pamela's point, listen, we've both been on lipstick lines and we've been on fragrance fill lines. And in my case, like Pamela, most of my career in the last 25 years, I've spent working with the great creatives who make fragrance, the perfumers, and to have audience with them and spend time with them and learn from them. It's so fulfilling. And so, be a student. Someone once in my world once said, we're all students of scent, right? Meaning it levels the playing field. So even our CEO would say he's a student of scent. And so do that as a daily basis, practice and repeat. And, make sure that you are, maximizing the different connections that you have, the people you have, and ask for help, reach out. And as Pam says, study up, make sure you can get answers and don't feel so alone with it all, and start to build these people who you have at a moment's notice. Like I have with Pam, she's given me such incredible advice. So leadership challenges included, and she'll, talk me off the ledge and set me straight.
Every
And
day,
so that was a great question. And
That's a great
yeah.
question. I think
Yeah.
we all
Yeah.
feel it.
Yeah, you
If
would
you're
also,
honest, you feel it.
you would not have been in the positions you were placed in if someone didn't think you were prepared.
Right.
So a lot of that is not coming from external. Other people think you're prepared. What is it that and then where are my weak points? So then I can study up on these kinds of things, right? But that's something you deal with. We've dealt with it when we were little kids. You deal with you could, go into always wanted to be in the beauty industry. You get into your favorite industry and you still feel like you know so much. And then there's always going to be points but you would not be hired for that if other people didn't deem you worthy, to do that. So I always think like I'm here. And so, you can do it. It's in your head.
Yeah.
Let's
Oh,
get-
one thing, I just want to say one thing too. When you follow something you love, I'm sure you're feeling the passion that we have for our industry. When you follow what you love, you will never go to work.
Love what you
again.
do and the money will follow.
Exactly. You will love
It's
your
true.
job
Hate it.
every day. And you can see it in our faces.
Yes.
We love what we do.
Yeah.
And we've gone through a lot, but this what we really want to do today is imbue you with desire to lead, to be an imposter, you know,
Yeah.
to embrace your own humility and your own journey in life and have the courage to go out there and do what you love.
And I think as a safety net, Kathy said it really well at the outset of our talk, is meeting the moment. So if I'm going to meet with a perfumer on their new creation and I have the, you know, as we call the top, mid, dry, I'm going to do my research before. I'm going to obviously smell it on myself. I'm going to make sure I have a point of view on it. I'm going to talk to the evaluator to get his or her point of view. So when I have my meeting with them to get their vision and find out their inspirations so that I can write the story, I'm going to have something to say and I'm going to have questions ready to ask. Why did you choose the vanilla Madagascar versus the vanilla tincture from India? I really want to know. And so I think that helps me feel that I'm not an imposter. I can do this, and it
Just a
emboldens
little bit.
just a little bit. Yeah, it keeps you honest, and it makes you feel a little more confident.
We have
That's a
one
great
last
question.
question. We have, they told me I have 4 minutes.
Yes.
Well, thank you for an inspiring session. I was wondering, as you were working through your career or as you have experiencing with people, from an outsider view, it feels like this industry kind of like almost rewards these more masculine traits when it comes to leadership, like this more result driven, almost lack of empathy, as we previously said. Like, how do you kind of see yourself balancing the two sides and then also stands out as female leader who embody these femininity in the industry that previously has been male dominated and kind of like rewards these kind of traits instead?
Well, I will say that you have to be very left and right brain balanced. You really do in leadership. You do need to know the numbers. You need to be able to stand up for yourself. This is why you get this advanced degree. You stand up for yourself in front of the CEO. You gotta be able to support your proposition, especially in marketing, with facts. And you have to be on top of the left brain, facts, figures, market information. You have to have that as well. What I think what is unique about female leadership is that we do have connectors to the right and left brain, and we can feel something and think about it at the same time. So, you know, how do we deal with our male counterparts? First of all, they've softened a lot, I will say.
That's
in
true.
general, even though there are a lot of still very many men in senior C-suite positions, they men, this is about men understanding women in leadership too, and they are much more collaborative, and they appreciate women as partners and collaborators in business. If you're good at your job, you're good at your job.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that is really, it's palpable right now that didn't happen 20 years ago.
And you know, we're coming to the end of our discussion,
Yes, I
but we
know.
could go on for so much longer. You know, we have this industry that's so dedicated to women feeling beautiful and all that soft kind of lovely things, but it's a business. And because it's such a big business and because you all are so focused in on it, we have a special announcement. Pam, for some time, has been eager to help the department to do a panel and to get more involved in educating you folks and meeting more leaders. And so this is just the kickoff really to an annual event in March for women leaders in beauty. That Pamela, we are going to go from here and start planning that for next year. And whether you're going to be here next year as a student or you're going to be an alumni, we want you to find out and come back, because it's going to be a panel or maybe 2 panels that we think is really going to grow and that NYU will own and just get bigger and bigger every year. But it will be in March for Women's History Month, and it will be in a sector that's very female consumer oriented and where leadership is rising, where so many of you really do have a passion and an interest. And so we want to make sure that we're bringing the very best leaders to your attention so that you see the business of this all. In addition to getting really good lipstick and all the other things that we want to know about it, your samples and smelling really great. But it's a business. And so again, what I hope you folks took away from this guys, women, everybody in this room, is, be ready to meet the moment. And part of your education here in NYU, part of having great educators here like Pamela, having great guests like Kate, is you being prepared to meet the moment. And what you can do right now is, particularly folks on Zoom and other folks who, this is not your classroom, you're meeting the moment by showing up,
Nice.
by being here and by learning from folks. And so when you do have the imposter syndrome, that little, when it starts speaking to you, you can push it on down saying, I got this, I'm well prepared, I'm meeting the moment, and you'll get there no matter what industry. Thank you so much for being here. And Pamela, thank you for this great opportunity. We're gonna take Pamela's idea and we're gonna rock it. Thank you, everybody on Zoom too, for meeting us, and we're looking forward to our next Future Forward event coming up soon.